I'll hold it this way.
Yes.
Okay. I will try to just say a few words about our institution. By now, we are close to 36,000 students. The university has increased tremendously in the last few years. We have close to 1,600 tenure track faculty, but you can see the other numbers. We are the largest physical plant you see in the University of California system, and now we are second from UCLA in terms of the size of the student cohort, but we are growing very rapidly. Now, a program like the advanced program, when you try to increase the number of women of color in the faculty ranks, you cannot just start with a program and then say, I'm going to increase those just by throwing money at the problem. You need to have a foundation on which you build. And as a matter of fact, there are two things that need to work together, that's what we've done, and I think our program has been so successful. Number one is, of course, to increase the numbers, because without the numbers, change does not happen. But second, at the same time, you need to have programs in place to be able to improve the environment, and the two need to happen at the same time. So the university had already started in the early 90s identifying issues that will improve the conditions for women faculty, and of course the conditions for every other faculty, because you will see from data that there are more men faculty who take advantage of these programs, especially the dual career programs, work-life policies, and so forth, than women. So it was excellent really for everyone. And of course, those programs, as many others we talked this morning, these are not unique programs for our institution, but they presented a suite of programs and policies we had in place on which then the advanced program could be based and then make a difference. Again, you will see a lot of these programs that we have put in place, and as a matter of fact, now the effort is not only to make them available to faculty, but also graduate students. So that's what the university is focusing on. We've, of course, learned that we have to communicate the information as widely as possible, and this is something that everybody has learned who is trying to increase the number of women faculty and faculty of color. And we need to assume that not everyone else knows about the program. But the other thing is that we also need to create a culture where the use of these programs does not become a stigma. And for us, the fact that many more men are using these programs than women has really removed that stigma from the culture of the institution. Of course, we try now even to go deeper into policies and practices where that could have been an issue, like promotion and tenure, for example. There are, at the tail distribution, at the tail of our faculty distribution, there are still a few people who cannot really go away from the old thinking about how faculty should work and how faculty should look and sound and think. But the majority of our faculty, the supermajority, really has signed up on programs like this. I would like to show you this, and I will stop with these numbers, and I will change the presentation to my colleague, to Phil, to show you the major change that we've made in the numbers. Not just the numbers of faculty, but the numbers of women faculty. We started already being in a great position in 2012 when the program started with 41.6 female faculty percentage of female faculty, about 87 of them. And then you can see that we moved in 5 years to 43.9% for that. Then from associate professors, we moved in 5 years from 34 to 48.3%. Then professors from 19.6% to 30.6%, which is a huge change considering that full professors remain in the system. It's not like the assistants and associates who move through the system. But you can see also the tremendous change that we had in the numbers of women faculty. And you can see, in fact, that the change was huge, just in 5 years. And why that happened and why it will be sustained is something that our colleagues will talk to you about. But I have to say, we were surprised ourselves with the progress that we have shown in the program. Not only that, but we were able to exclusively recruit, as part of the advanced program, women of color as faculty, far beyond the numbers that any other institution has been able really to demonstrate. So with that, I would like to change it to Phil, my colleagues who practically did all of this work.
Thank you very much. All right, so I've had the pleasure of working at UC Davis for about 27 years, and just in that amount of time, it has evolved tremendously. Now, here's a photograph that I found from archives online about a faculty from 1927, and as you can see, there's only one female faculty member in this. And as Chancellor Katehi said, we are a campus now that is in a very, very big phase of transition, particularly during her tenure as well. We are too in the very last phases of our Advanced Institutional Transformation Grant. Well, we try to convey the point that we are a campus that values our faculty and values our students and values our staff, and we have principles of community. I won't read it all out loud to you, but this is one critical part of it, that we affirm dignity inherent in all of us and maintain a climate of equity and justice demonstrated by respect for one another. So some of the things that we've done through our advanced program are what I want to share with you. You've heard some of these things a little bit earlier today. For example, we established through our grant a Strength Through Equity and Diversity Committee. This is a committee of faculty who train search committees about proper conduct of hiring and implicit bias. Every faculty member at UC Davis who serves on a search committee is required to get this training, and they have to renew it every 3 years. This will now become institutionalized through our Office of Academic Affairs. We have a number of work-life programs. Why? Because this is important to our new faculty, particularly the assistant professors. Things that you've heard about before that include like adult and elder care, stopping the clock, family-friendly recruitment practices. We can bring people as long as their children and a young child and child care for them and so on. Mortgage origination programs, programs to find jobs for their partners. And we've actually earned 5 years in a row a World Work Seal of Distinction for these kinds of programs that we believe help a lot in recruitment. Now, we also take a very proactive role in oversight of campus hiring. And this is one of the things that the Associate Vice Provost at UC Davis does. So we begin by taking a look at what the workforce availability is. This data is ultimately generated through the National Science Foundation. So a department that wants to do hiring in a particular area is allowed then to specify particular disciplines, and we know by gender and ethnicity what that workforce availability is. So we look at that and then compare that to an applicant pool. This is just a sample of that. So we look at the pool composition and compare it to the workforce distribution. We look then at a narrower pool of individuals who are given strong consideration and compare that as well with respect to gender and ethnic diversity. And then finally, our shortlist pool. These are the individuals that we invite to campus. And if at any point we believe that there is a deficiency with respect to the diversity, then we will enter into a dialogue with the dean, which sometimes might mean the abrogation of the search or its failure. Sometimes it means looking at candidates again. Sometimes it means doing additional advertising and so on. But this is something that is monitored throughout the process centrally. Now, diversity is tremendously important to us, as Chancellor Katehi was saying, and so this year we have established a new rule, and that is that every person who is applying for a ladder-rank faculty position at UC Davis is required to submit a contribution to diversity statement. Every search committee is required to evaluate these as well. This helps us get past the rule that we are not allowed to select individuals on the basis of their gender or ethnicity, but we can select them on the basis of what they aspire to do with respect to contributions to diversity. So this has become a tremendously important tool in California in the process of hiring. Salary equity, though, is another part of it. The University of California has a somewhat unusual type of salary plan, one that has two main components, a base salary, which is determined by an individual's rank, and then specific steps within that rank. These are fixed numbers. They cannot be negotiated. But then we also have a component that we'll call a differential salary, and this is discretionary. This is where potential inequities can arise. Here's an example of what we have been doing, though, for the last few years. We recognize that there can be salary inequities with respect to the discretionary component. So this is a graph, just for a sample, the College of Engineering, that looks at the relationship between how fast faculty progress versus what that differential salary is. And what we find interesting is that you can have faculty who have been progressing very well, but have zero differential salary, and even having faculty who are not progressing so fast, but have high differential salaries. Why? Because these are things that are typically given out through the process of initial recruitment as well as retention. This is where the inequities occur. Ideally, these numbers should all be overlaying each other. So our 3-year plan is to then take a pool of money that we have from salaries and attempt to reduce this kind of gap. And you can see the difference that just in 1 year, from these numbers down here, moving closer, the red lines represent the averages. So over time, our goal is to try to pull these numbers up, and it's actually working extremely effectively. All right, my last slide. Yeah, check my time. Oh, I'm doing great. I'm trying to talk fast because I want to have time for questions. This is our last slide, and this builds upon what Chancellor Katehi was saying before. When you look at our hiring, not just now who our faculty are, but in terms of our hiring, you can compare the 2008 to 12 period to the 2013-15 period and the 2016 to 17 period. And this is the point that she was trying to make earlier. With respect to women, we are virtually at 50% of our latter rank faculty now being hired as women. People of color, it's going up as well. Underrepresented minorities, monotonically increasing. Hispanic, monotonically increasing as well. Now, we've got some work to do with respect to African Americans down here, but overall, the trends are very, very positive. And this, we believe, is a direct result of the kinds of proactive practices that we've initiated under our Institutional Transformation Advance Grant. You want me to do this?
Oh, that's complicated.
Yeah, your turn.
Well, as I begin talking about the story of the Center for the Advancement of Multicultural Perspectives on Science, I want to publicly acknowledge, while this is a faculty-driven initiative, but the initiative was certainly inspired by Chancellor Emerita Linda Katehi, and so I want to publicly acknowledge the inspirational viewpoints that she brought about the faculty. The mission is to support discovery through faculty diversity with an emphasis on diverse candidates, and I have to tell you that even in 2017, standing in line waiting to check into hotels, that people still think, oh, it's lowering standards. This is nothing about lowering standards. If anything, we raise them tremendously through our campus faculty scholars who are exceptional scientists in a STEM discipline, selected for their transformative thinking, unique perspectives, interdisciplinary approaches, and leadership potential to impact their STEM discipline in profound and enduring ways. And when we welcome them, I always tell them that among that group, among the incoming group, we are looking forward to having Nobel laureates here at UC Davis. So what occurs through the Compost review process, candidates meet department search committee criteria first. And that is established by the department and by the school. The search committee has gone through a preparation program that is now required of everybody that participates in a search committee at UC Davis. The department nomination then goes to the Compost Initiative, where we have criteria that includes work with and engagement with diverse populations, which is defined in a variety of ways. It could be community engagement, it could be hiring lab students, it can be mentorship. We do not define it, but we seek faculty that are committed to diversity. The nominee is reviewed by the Compost Committee with the recommendation then sent to the Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, who makes the final decision. Final review is by the Vice Provost and Compost Founding Director, which is made for the recommendation to the Provost. So what are the best practices to sustain institutional transformation? The very first thing, obviously, is mentors. And we make sure that all of our Compost faculty will have mentors available through their department and through the university and outside externally to the university at large. We have a capital resource network that helps them with the Partner Opportunity Program. We have the university executive support. This is essential, and I'm sure all of you that have attended programs today have recognized the importance that these things do not happen, these programs do not happen without university executive support. It has to start from the top. Well, it has to be part of the top thinking and top support. Climate is also very important in terms of how things are occurring in the departments and in the university at large. Policies and practices in terms of appointment, promotion, and retention. And I've been asked many times about how this is going to occur. We bring in not only assistants, we bring in full professors, but with everyone, because of the mentorship and the launch committees that occur, we will, and because of the high caliber of these, the faculty coming in, the policy and practices are in place to make sure that they get advanced. And then what drives much of the activity that we are learning over time, and will be sustaining some of these programs, is the Social Science Research Initiative, which I frequently say is probably one of the most important, if not the most important part of the advance. This particular initiative has been following the careers and the journeys, professional journeys of beginning with the Office of the President of the University of California, presidential postdoctoral fellows. And because we started with Latinas and the number was not very great, we have worked with other programs, including the Latina Science Network and the SACNAS, to be able to identify other the social science, other researchers, and to follow what their journey was. What is informing is the kind of supports that are needed not only in departments and in universities, but also beginning with the mentorship that occurs over a lifetime, the environments, the value in which they are esteemed. We've heard stories here of women who parents were imprisoned as children. They spent 10 years in a community college but graduated with PhDs in biology from University of California, Berkeley. Best practices, it's regular meeting with the Chancellor and top administrative leadership, engagement of the community, Compost committee for the vetting, opportunities to meet with the candidates during the interview process, establishing values and tradition, and there's a whole list of them there. Then the Leadership Institute. This has been one very key element of the whole initiative, because what this does is it pulls cross disciplines, it produces a cohort. And I can quote to you some of the students, some of the faculty that are saying that it's the first time they've been together with a group that, even though they're not in the same department, it's a very safe group to talk with. There's all kinds of new initiatives that are occurring because they are thinking together, and they're becoming a think tank as well. They're learning to lead teams, to lead scientific innovation, and to communicate science with state and federal representatives. And here you see us with our representative from Davis, Garamendi. Thank you. Now allow questions.
Thank you, the four of you, for this presentation and for introducing us to the work that the University of California, Davis is doing. I don't know if you have more slides to present.
No, that we're just open for questions right now.
Yes, yes. So I see a question there and another here. Maybe you can begin there. Thank you.
Hello? Okay, yeah. So Joyce Wong, Boston University. So thank you. That was a really great talk. This is a question for Philip, actually. So on the NS comparing for the faculty candidates, the NSF data comparing the workforce availability and comparing to the candidate pool and the contributions to diversity statement required from faculty candidates. I think that's wonderful, but my question is do you also require that of senior faculty hires? You know, because as you know, senior hires are, you know, quite a different story. So I'm just curious what the policies are at UC Davis regarding that.
Every applicant for every ladder rank, which includes tenure track as well as tenured faculty, is required to provide a contribution to diversity statement. They may be coming in as at the most senior possible level, and they have to provide one of those.
And what about comparison with the pool? You know, if you're doing senior high, I know that's more complicated, but.
We'll still compare against the pool. And that's just a start, by the way, because, you know, if you've got, let's say, a College of Engineering where 20% of recent graduates are women, do you say, well, 20% of our applicant pool is women, we'll pat ourselves on the back? No. So it's just a beginning, but at least it serves as a benchmark.
I believe we have here in the front a question.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I'm Francesca Crivellaro from the University of Bologna and a Protina project team member. You were showing some the increasing rates of the, let's call them minorities over time. I was wondering, did you have the data disaggregated by gender and intersectionality between minority and gender? Because they were all together when we were talking about natives, black people.
It would be possible for us to get the joint distribution of gender and ethnicity, but on the reports that I showed you that are generated, they are not joint distributions anymore. The university system-wide decided to not provide that information for the simple reason that it could imply a lack of confidentiality because the numbers would become so small, and that's why it's only aggregated to the marginal distributions rather than the joint. In the end, it is possible once we do our hires to uncover that information. The search committees, by the way, are not allowed to know that. They are not allowed to pick anybody on the basis of gender or ethnicity. So that information is going to be known to a dean and it's going to be known to me, but it will not be known to the members of the search committee.
Any further question? At back, yes. Another one.
Thank you very much. It's very inspiring. Jennifer Love from the University of British Columbia. I have a question about the this diversity statement and the requirement. What happens if somebody really doesn't do a good job with that, but a department hiring committee thinks, wow, this is a really star researcher, we want this person? What happens in that scenario?
The search committee will make a recommendation to the department, which is free to overrule it. The department will make a recommendation to the dean, who is free to overrule it. I think it would be very unlikely that a department would select somebody who had a fairly poor statement about contributions to diversity. For people who are assistant professors, they may not have had an opportunity to develop a track record about it, but that's okay for us. We want to know what they intend to do once they land on the ground. All faculty members at UC Davis are expected to contribute in some way to enhancing the diversity and the inclusiveness of the campus. It's not something that is optional. It is something that will be always evaluated on everybody's regular merit advancements.
You're way ahead of us.
Any other questions? Yes, the lady in blue.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. My name is Ella Ghosh, and I work for a national committee that works with gender balance and ethnic diversity in Norway. And we have been lucky enough to get statistics, which in our area are quite hard with regards to ethnic diversity, because we don't have self-registration at census like you have in the US. But the fact still remains that when it comes to gender balance, we know that there's a 50-50 balance, and that means that when we use affirmative action for gender, it's easier to give that as the backdrop for actions that actually cost money and that perhaps are to disadvantage, where women are given an advantaged position. We have mentoring programs and we have scholarships, and there's a lot of things. So when it comes to ethnic diversity, our ethnic minority groups are all small, very fragmented groups, and we have a high representation of foreign citizens. 25% of professors, for example, are foreign citizens, but we don't actually have much representation of, for example, people from the global south or from typical immigrant groups. So how do you handle, in the US you have also advantaged and disadvantaged ethnic minorities? Do you differentiate between them? That's one thing. One last thing. We have had a reorganization in our sector, and in that connection, leaders are asked to document whether, when they recruit new leaders, during fusions, they're asked to document whether they have capacity and knowledge about gender equality and diversity. So your suggestion about not only speaking about what has happened, what the experience is, but also talk about plans is one that I hope I can take home to Norway, because it's, but the big question is, it can't replace representation of ethnic minorities. You have to have both things at the same time. All leaders have to work with good diversity policies, whether they're white or black or pale yellow, like. But it's at the same time, how do you manage to keep those two things separate and not let the one be a proxy for minority representation?
Do you want to try to answer?
Yeah. I think you're at a good point. In California, we have a unique situation where we cannot use race or ethnicity in decision-making and hiring because of a state initiative. So the context, I think, in which we're handling it is in terms of how individuals write their application. So, for example, we are now concerned with this particular initiative focused on Latina STEMs. These are people who are historically underrepresented, and in the state of California, that's largely Mexican origin, who were the group that was targeted. I mean, all Latinas were targeted, but that was a group that's been historically underrepresented. So in that context, the Compost initiative used the proposals that were submitted that would discuss how they had experience and interest in addressing that community. We're also now doing that with our African American initiative. So we cannot, by law in the state of California, use any affirmative action that targets race or ethnicity or gender. So now we're using as a statement in the application and even in the description, those individuals who, again, have an interest and a track record working with the African American community. That's one element. So within the job description, you create this as an equal element that is critical in the assessment of that hiring. The second element that we've learned from the Compost initiatives, you have to create an environment, because you had mentioned the issue of isolation. The worst thing you can do for any underrepresented minority is tokenize them, have them as the only individual in a unit, because essentially they become targeted in multiple ways. One, if they self-identify, speak for their community, they'll be viewed in a negative light because they're viewed as the advocate, and that is their primary interest. And that becomes, again, going down to microaggressions and all that. And but the other element, quite frankly, is in order to retain individuals, they have to have a sense of collective identity with peers. So the Compost initiative brings those underrepresented minorities, in this case it was Latinas, from computer science, engineering, the different disciplines, together within a holistic unit. You have to create an environment where there's a sense of community and your identity doesn't have to be suppressed. So if I speak Spanish, it's not a problem because I can speak Spanish. If I speak Spanglish, I can speak Spanglish. If I want to code switch culturally, I can code switch. If I want to talk about a community without first explaining what my community is about. So what we have done is make the environmental context equally important as the numerical context. If you only focus on numbers and tokenize, you're not going to retain. So it's like getting a student through the door who's underrepresented. You know you're not going to retain them if they're the only ones in that classroom. So I think this is the way we're approaching. We're making an environment in which we create and we don't penalize somebody for their cultural identity, because the model of assimilation, and we've found this from our social science data, is a punitive model for individuals who really are tied. And in California, both our Latino community as well as our African American community is very tied to their identity structure. To force them to assimilate into the white male scientist structure will result in individuals opting out for other experiences, because if you think about it, if you have to suppress your identity, your language, and your culture in order to survive, that's a high price. And that's a tax as much as it is tax to be a mother, right? We were talking about gender taxes. That is a tax. So we are really focusing on the fact that we want to create a community that does not create isolation, and assimilation is a primary cost of becoming a scientist.
Thank you. I believe there's another question, just one, that Mr. in a white shirt.
Thank you very much. My name is David Rubain. I'm from Equality Challenge Unit in London, in England. I was very interested in the requirements on candidates seeking employment around equality statements, I think you said, or equality contributions. I'm not sure if this is true in the US, but in the UK it's not uncommon for all staff within institutions to be set objectives, annual objectives. This could be true for faculty as well. And I wondered whether the contributions that you're referring to for potential candidates or for candidates is then subsequently translated on an, if you like, on an annual basis to each employee, each staff member of whatever grade, whether in the faculty or in the professional support services, relating to their contribution to equity.
Well, these are aspirations. They are not specifically held to them, but it gives us a window into their thinking about how much they value inclusiveness at UC Davis, because we serve a very, very culturally, ethnically diverse population in California. But this belongs to them, and they have an opportunity to update us about that every 2 to 3 or rarely 4 years, depending on how often they are evaluated. But there is no set process in place that follows what they write and have that translate down, for example, you said to staff. Did I understand your question completely, though?
Partly you answered, but what I was wondering, well, I suppose a primary question is whether it's common in the US sector to set objectives for all staff, including faculty, and to appraise them on an annual basis. And if so, whether you could have, as a standard approach, equity-based objectives for every single staff member.
Well, we don't have that. This is something that is for ladder rank faculty only, this particular process. We have not extended this process, for example, to staff hiring or to non-ladder rank faculty. This is specifically for the ladder ranks, which means that they are funded through state funds.
Okay.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Thank you, the three of you, the four, Professor Katehi.